What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler, joined by Andy Herman from the Pack-A-Day podcast, ready to talk some football after a big Packers victory. Andy, another W with a backup quarterback at the helm. Give Matt LaFleur his flowers. What a performance from the entire team. This was domination from the Green Bay Packers.
What's the opposite of a burn the tape game? Is it
Right.
like, you frame the tape game? I don't know what it is, but
Exactly. We embalm the tape and keep it forever so we can reference it and pay tribute to it at all times.
I agree. This was one of those type of games where there's so many times I go through and I watch the All-22. I'm like, all right, this is pretty nondescript. A couple nice plays here. I could not stop clipping plays from this game because it was just over and over and over. I'm like, oh, I want to show everyone this. I want to show everyone this. And whether it was Tucker Kraft blocking people into oblivion, whether it was
so fun.
Edgerrin Cooper jump cutting with Tony Pollard to meet him in the hole for a tackle for loss, a Jair Alexander pick six. Of course, we know all the big plays, but there was so much little things in this game that was so noteworthy as well. And then, of course, guys like Emmanuel Wilson, Malik Willis, just we can go on and on. It is hard to find much to pick at in this. I'm sure we will, is what we do, but it's hard to find much to pick on in this game. This is a really, really fun result.
Glad you mentioned a couple of guys on the defensive side of the ball there, and let's start there because it's not often that the defense is kind of the predominant narrative coming out of a Packers football game. But man, if that wasn't the case yesterday, and it is interesting to see how the game started, right? How it unfolds with the drive. They go right down the field, score a touchdown, and you're thinking, maybe not it's a shootout that we're
Right.
about to be entertained by, but you do think, okay, well, Tennessee seems to have a way of working here, and they seem to know where to attack when it comes to the Packers defense. But damn if Halfley and company didn't kind of right that ship almost right away. Now, obviously, the incredible play, eyes on the quarterback from Jair Alexander really flips the script.
Yeah.
The whole game changes on its head on that pick six. But even with, they got the lead, they didn't sit back. They were not content. And I thought that really spoke volumes to everything we heard from Halfley this offseason, right? In regards to we're not going to be kind of sit and wait for it to come to us. They took the game to the Titans in a way we really haven't seen from a Packers defense in a long time.
No, and I think the thing I appreciated too is, yeah, I understood Matt getting a little bit more conservative in the second half and being like,
So
all right, let's
because he had control of the game.
Exactly, 1,000,000%.
Yeah.
But on the defensive side, there was none of that. There was no, we're going to get conservative and just there's a little bit maybe on those final drives, which again, understandably, but they came after Will Levis and they forced the issue. And I thought the two big, game changing moments in this one, like you mentioned, one the Jair pick, and then later in the game, the Kingsley and Igbare sack fumble. That is a 2-possession game, 13-point game. They're driving down. And with the opportunity, if they get a touchdown there, it's a 6-point game. And I think the third quarter at that point, maybe early fourth at the worst. And you're still like, that's a ball game. And instead, Enigbare forces the fumble and it completely changes the tenor of the game there as well. So I just thought overall, you get any game where it's 7 net points, 14 allowed, but 7 scored on the defensive side, 8 sacks, 3 turnovers, and holding the rushing attack to what they had, I think maybe 8 carries for 20 some yards. Like it was just an unbelievable performance. And Kelvin Ridley too. That's another hat tip to Jair and company. 1 catch, 9 yards. It is all over the place. And then of course Xavier McKinney is weekly interception just to cap things off at the end. So awesome all the way around.
I think it's funny too. You mentioned those 2 key plays, which I 100% agree as far as the real kind of changing moments in the game, really solidifying the Packers kind of victory in those moments. But I'd also put an honorable mention to the performance on the 4th down stop. Quay Walker and company corralling what looked like they're trying to get their quarterback out on the edge and give him kind of a high-low read. Nothing was open, and so he's trying to make that happen with his legs. That was never going to happen against the Packers defense. How many games have we watched, Andy, where the Packers defense leaves something wide open in the flat in one of those? And they tried to run essentially the same kind of action that the Eagles ran against the Falcons the other night. Barkley was wide open on that play. Packers had it covered. They were ready for anything, seemingly, that the Titans were going to throw at them. I just thought overall it was just a really incredibly disciplined performance inside all this chaos that they were creating. And that, again, is very unlike what we've seen in Green Bay.
I'm so glad you brought up that word discipline, because I know everyone remembers the very first play of the game. They do the fake toss outside,
Right.
and Jaden Reed comes behind the linebackers and he's just wide open. It's a beautiful play call. It's preying on everything we talked about last week. They're going to have to run to the outside. So what are the Titans? I'm sure thinking in that game, they're going to have to run to the
All
outside.
week long. They know we're not going to run inside, blah,
Yep.
blah, blah.
So they go fake pitch, and then Jane Reed's wide open. Well, the Titans attempt that exact same play later in the game. Fake pitch outside, Tyler Boyd coming across, and Isaiah McDuffie just reads it perfectly, and he reacts to it. He gets back in coverage, and it leads to a Devontae Wyatt sack. And like, that is what cohesive defense looks like when you've got players on the back end covering it and seeing the play, anticipating a play, covering it up, and then your defensive lineman, because he's got that extra tick and because the ball doesn't come out right away, now you've got a sack. It's a negative play for the offense. Talk about the juxtaposition there of a 30-plus yard play for the Packers offense, executing it well, and the Titans defense not reacting to it, and a sack for the defense instead of a positive play for the Titans. Just, again, that is the type of day that it was for Green Bay.
I'm glad you brought up Wyatt too, because another really active day. Obviously, you see the sacks, but I think down in and down out, he's playing pretty damn well. And it's interesting the way it has to work in concert. You just mentioned, the coverage on the back end causing the quarterback to have to hold the football a tick longer. But that's where Wyatt has made his bones, as far as he hasn't really blown anybody off the ball. He's really worked into the quarterback on all of these sacks because the quarterback has nowhere to go downfield. So it's like, I'm very happy that this is happening, obviously, but I hope people recognize that the way it's happening is because these things are working in concert. And that's really the whole front in general. You mentioned Enigbare. I understand he's taking advantage of a very poor offensive tackle there in Tennessee, but
Take advantage of it.
man, that's what you're paid to do. That's the job. And if you're not, then people are sitting there going, why aren't you? So
Yep.
that's the work they've done up front has been so kind of exciting and promising. I will say that it is interesting, and I think you did just tweet about this before we started recording. Kenny Clark has been, I don't want to say missing, but I will say it has been a bit of a surprise how he has been a non-factor throughout these first 3 games.
I'm glad you brought that up. I just want to go back to Wyatt for a second. I think he's playing a little bit more under control, and I think like there were times last year he would win with immediacy, and
then
like,
he's
all
up
of a
the
sudden,
field
he's
and
up the
misses
field
the
and-
quarterback. Yeah,
exactly. So I think the finishing has been better. I think he's playing with better patience. He had a great play in this one too, where not a sack, but he burst through 2 offensive linemen into the backfield. There's a tight end trying to get around to make a block. He runs into the tight end, sheds that guy, then goes towards the running back. There's a guy laying on the ground in front of him, goes around that guy and still makes the tackle on the running back. So Wyatt really fun. Yeah, with Clark, I think these last few years he's been a little bit of a slow starter, and then he kind of ramps it up as the season goes along. And by the time end of the season comes along, Kenny's playing a little bit more like Kenny. I think this is a little bit more of an exaggerated version of that. I think he struggled a little bit holding up against double teams, which is very uncharacteristic for him. I think we've seen him washed out of his gap a couple times. I don't think it's been like, oh my God, what a disaster this is or anything like that. But this is a guy that you just gave a new contract to kind of make that impact on the interior of the defense. I think you want a little bit more. I think you expect a little bit more. I expect him to get better as the course of the season goes along, but hopefully that page turns. Garrett Bradbury has nightmares of Kenny Clark. Like, he has nightmares of Kenny Clark.
Yeah.
So if there's one person he's kind of owned in his career, it is this. So if there's a game for him to get back on track this week, it is probably against Minnesota and Garrett Bradbury.
When you talk about the job that Hafley did on Sunday and you look at the parts working together, and as I mentioned earlier, the way that first drive kind of played out and the way it was clear Tennessee wanted to attack the Packers, not just linebackers, but safeties as well. They wanted to work through the middle of the field.
Yep.
They didn't want much to do with Jair Alexander for good reason. And I thought, Stokes was playing really solid ball throughout that game as well. I was kind of encouraged by the fact that regardless of the fact that that's obviously what Tennessee wanted to do, the Packers adjusted well enough and made it like not impossible, but it was tougher for them to do what they wanted against the Packers linebackers, who, again, I think you look at this game and you look a bit of a motley assembly, again, really picking through guys getting like 8 snaps, guys getting 10 snaps, but damn if it isn't working. I understand McDuffie isn't the greatest linebacker ever, or probably not even one of the greatest linebackers in the NFL currently, but damn if he doesn't play his ass off down in and down out, does his job, and more often than not, it's a winning play. again, I know he's going to get taken advantage of. I know he's going to get kind of run over at times by some of these interior linemen, but I was really impressed by his down in and down out effort. And as far as like operating within the defense and the linebacking group as a whole, that's probably the weakest spot on the roster defensively, right? But I thought they played winning football as a collective.
Every single time, like, I'm not saying this team is a Super Bowl team, we're not that far yet, but like every Super Bowl team has a Charlie Peppera, every team has a Frank Zambo.
Damn,
like it doesn't, they don't always have to be the top of the top. There's always a 22nd player of your 22 starters.
Yep.
And to me, if we're talking about Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie, Keyshawn Nixon, some of these, if those are your 20th, 21st, 22nd starters, my goodness, are you in a really good spot? Like we are not talking about, oh my goodness, there is and not to throw anyone under the bus, but there's no Royce Newmans that are starting on this team. There's no Aaron Bells. There's no, like, you can get through a season with these guys being your starters and feel like, you know what, this is okay. Every team has got something they're going to have to overcome a little bit. Nobody has 22 Pro Bowlers / all pros on their roster. And I love the way that Isaiah McDuffie is playing. He is rallying to every single football. He is being a sound tackler right now. Can you pick on him in coverage a little bit?
Definitely.
Absolutely. But
although who is that not true of in the Packers linebacking corps?
Yeah,
that's the other thing. I see so many people, especially on Twitter, talking about like, well, this guy's getting beat. Well, like, they're all getting beat at some point because they're not world beaters. They're not all pros. But again, down in and down out as a collective, I think they're playing winning ball.
Can we real quick too? Because I know this is like a big thing that's been out. Can we talk about Rashan Gary really quick? Because I went through and I like paid extra close attention to Rashan Gary in this one because everyone's like, oh, he's going against this really bad right tackle and Enagbare is outperforming. I really like the way that Rashan played in this game. And I don't think anyone's like, of course, we would all like to see Rashan make a bigger TJ Watt impact and everything like that. But he has a sack washed off because of a weird, bizarro Preston Smith offsides penalty, which is frustrating. But that's a big time play in a third down that takes a touchdown off the board eventually.
Four point swing right there.
So like that's a huge play from Gary. The sack by LVN, Gary gets the immediate pressure on that.
It's the one he pressures the quarterback to step away from him and leads to LVN sack. I said that on Watch Party. No one wants to hear it.
I know there's two other plays where the other players get there a half a second quicker, but Gary's like, if they didn't get there, Gary was going to get there for a sack. And it just so happens somebody beat him by like a tenth of a second to get to the sack quicker. It's like, I thought he had a really nice game. Plus he got doubled a ton in this game. He got chipped. He got everything. So I had no issues. In fact, I thought Rashan Gary had a very nice game in this one. And any, talk of a Rashan Gary demise or anything like that, he was really good in this one.
Well, to me, the LVN sack is the perfect example of what, we always talk about as far as pressures, right? Give me pressures, affect the quarterback. Sacks will come. I don't care if he's going like without a sack for a game, 2, even 3 or 4. I don't care as long as he's affecting the pocket, as long as he's affecting the quarterback, and he's doing that. Like, the sacks will come, the numbers will come. It's just, I get frustrated when people get so down on him, or even Quay Walker, who I understand is he's the new Jarrett Bush, apparently. Like, everyone wants to just beat up on him on every single play. And it's like, all he's doing is going out there and playing his ass off down in and down out. Is he as fast as or as strong as some of these other players in the league? Nope. Or is he playing as well as maybe even guys on his own team? Nope. But he's doing his job and he's playing at a high level. I understand there's plenty of plays you can point to where, this guy's getting taken advantage of or didn't play very well. I still think he's playing winning football. And the Packers seem to think so too.
I thought this is his best game so far. I thought it was a good step in the right direction for Quay.
Very much agreed. Let's flip it around. Offensive side of the ball. You got to start with Malik Willis, right? I mean, what a day. I couldn't believe how confident not only he was, but obviously LaFleur was in having him push the ball down the field. That first slot fade to Watson, I was like, okay, we're going there today. And that didn't stop. I mean, it wasn't greatest show on turf or anything. They didn't throw it 50 times, but man, they were not afraid to let him sling it down the field. And that was fun to watch.
Against the Indianapolis Colts, you see that game and Malik deserves so much credit for that performance, but you can see enough of the smoke and mirrors to be like, okay, I see what Matt was trying to do. And like
hiding him away almost.
Exactly. Yes. Like, I get that. I appreciate the smoke and the mirrors. And I appreciate how he was able to juggle everything in that situation, but we can sort of see it. And this one, it was like Aaron, during games, I'm not exactly the jump out of my chair type and be like, oh my goodness type. Like I'm pretty even keeled at these for regular season games. Playoffs are different, but regular season games, pretty even. I was jumping out of my seats and like, oh my goodness, I did not know he had this early in this offense to do, like you said, the slot fade, a 3rd and 14 where he's looking left and then he looks right. And then on a dart to Romeo Dobbs, a 3rd and 8. How many times have we seen, even with Jordan in the game, where Matt's like, you know what, let's just check this down and live to see another down. 3rd and 18, he's like, nope, we're going to hit this to Christian Watson. And he rips one to Christian Watson. And then the scrambling and escapability on some of these plays, they utilize them. We talked about last week of maybe doing a little bit more read option. They used it on the first drive to great success. Like, everything he was asked to do, and even like 1 or 2 of these sacks that he took, I was still like, you know what,
smart stuff with the ball
exactly
all day long. I tweeted it out at some point, and someone was like, "Are you going to jinx him or whatever?" I'm like, "Do you believe in the Tooth Fairy too?" But he was so smart with the ball. Both of these games that he was asked to start, but as the game went on, to your point, there was one sack in particular where it's clear they're trying to find something deep downfield, dialing it up. Didn't like it. Didn't put the ball in jeopardy, took the sack, lived to fight another day. And look, you're the backup. That's your gig. That is your job. The ball is life. And the way he did take care of the ball and the way you mentioned the running ability, and they did obviously have a number of designed runs. He had 6 carries on the day, 73 yards. I think most of those were designed. There were 1 or 2 where he scrambled, but man, what an extra weapon. The fact that they really drew that up and started, obviously the first touchdown, but all game long, they seem to have a real knack for understanding, okay, this is how the Titans are probably going to play this. We can use that to our advantage as far as designing something for Malik with his legs when they're going to be looking for him to use his arm. I
see the conversation out there already of, is there a package for Malik Willis when Jordan Love comes back? I'll let you go first. I'll let you go first.
No, don't take the ball out of Jordan Love's hands. Exactly. It's Taysom Hill conversation all over again. No, absolutely not. But but it's good to know that now after 2 games, I think most people probably assume that Jordan will be back for this game against the Vikings on Sunday. That's no sure thing, but that's the assumption, right? If anything were to happen to Jordan, if he some kind of setback, etc., or so he gets hurt, blah blah, again, whatever. Now you have a way of working with Malik Willis.
Oh yeah.
You did this after he was in the building for 3 weeks. What can you do down the stretch here for a full season? You don't need to force it. You spent your entire offseason and summer getting ready for the season with Jordan Love. That has been installed, that has been repped, that has been your identity. You don't rip that up because, we had our backup quarterback play pretty damn well for 2 games.
I don't know, maybe teams with the number 1 overall quarterback in the draft that they spent on, like teams are going out of their way to do everything they can to find a stable, solid, decent quarterback that can win them games. And Green Bay just goes and said, we're going to flip a random 7th round pick for Malik Willis, and we're going to bring him in, integrate him into our system in under 3 weeks and go and win 2 football games and go 2-0 with them. Like, it is absurd what they've been able to accomplish in just a few weeks with Malik Willis.
I just think back to last year and how many guys went down and how many guys who filled in for the guys who went down, who also then themselves went down. And we saw like 3rd stringers coming in, and just the way everything usually falls apart with a backup in there, man, it has been the exact opposite. You've seen growth from 1 week to the next with Malik Willis. It is exciting, and none of it happens because of him alone, right? Matt always talks about it. It takes all 11 guys, and man, the work they did up front in this game against a very impressive, stout defensive front for the Titans. You can't say enough about it. I'll start with Josh Myers. I thought he played a hell of a game against 2 really formidable opponents there, those defensive tackles for the Titans. I thought Josh played lights out in this game.
I think this is the best we've seen Josh Myers in his career so far. And just, being solid, stable, not allowing any crazy big pressures, not doing anything like that. Like he has been sort of exactly what we want, the anchor in the middle of that offensive line, the guy that's making all the calls and checks. And again, we talk about with Jordan being out, how important that the play caller is at the center position to get everything organized. Like, I guarantee you that is a massive relief for Malik Willis that he has somebody like Josh up there to make that, we just have been asking for, can you just have a solid, play overall, and not maybe the inconsistencies that we've seen from Josh, because we've seen over the years some really
high
good
level
stuff
play.
from Josh,
It's
but it's
just been
always like it always just gets undercut by some of the other stuff he does in the game. And man, if he can just play this solid brand of football like we saw the last 2 weeks, it's not Pro Bowl-esque, but it's just really good, sound football, and that's all I want. If he can do that the remainder of the year, that will be a huge win for this offense and this offensive line.
And then the extension of the offensive line to the tight end position with Tucker Kraft. I mean, you talk about a weapon. And it's funny because I know people see the drop and they think, oh, he had kind of a down day. I thought he was so much fun to watch in this game. They utilized him in so many different ways in the run game, as far as just getting out in space and eliminating safeties or a corner trying to come down or cracking down on an end or getting a backer. Like, he is a joy to watch when he gets going and get working in the run game. I think obviously production in the passing game will come the more they're able to run the football. I think obviously getting Jordan back will help in that regard, but man, he is a fun football player to watch, and he's seemingly only getting better.
I thought coming out, he was definitely going to be somebody that had that run after the catch ability as a tight end. And then it was like, well, can he block and can be all around tight end? And then he answers that question pretty significantly late last year and early this year so far, where he's doing everything they ask him. And then it's like, oh, also, can you be sort of a Kyle Juszczyk H-back type player as well?
He did a ton of that today or yesterday, didn't he?
Like, oh, you can also do that as well. And it's just, oh my goodness, what he is bringing to the table. As a blocker. I mean, the first play where Malik Willis is going down in the huge read option, he gets out there and has a pancake block on that one. He completely throws somebody out of the club on another play. Like, he's playing really, really fun football, and he's not 100%. You can tell he went out of that game partly with a shoulder injury and was questionable return. He came back. He was in the red jersey last week. Like, and part of that's like, he's playing a violent brand of football. Like, you're going to get some bumps and bruises a little bit, but my goodness, the way he is playing, please just keep that up and keep him healthy, because it is such a value add to this offense.
Especially when you got Musgrave getting literally blown up into a ball carrier. Come on, Luke. Man,
I will say
that was tough to watch.
Arden Key comes across so fast, and he does like a full WWE style like cross body block. He just flies. I'm like, because what I try to do when I'm watching some of this stuff is like, I try to put myself in the players, and I'm like, man, if I come across, because I'm getting like, you can see he's like almost getting ready to do the normal thing where the two guys collide together and see who's going to win. So he's getting ready to go like low and get, collide with this player to block him, and all of a sudden he's in midair doing a full cross body, and I'm like, what is he like? You can tell it totally caught him by surprise, and I'm like, I don't know, unless you can like literally pick him up and do a WWE like backbreaker,
spin him around, throw him down,
do something. I'm like, I don't know what he's saying. Again, it's not a great play from Luke. It's not a good look. I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, that's impressive from Arden Key, and tip of your cap for throwing your body out there and causing chaos.
Absolutely, a lot of chaos from that defensive front. And then, hey, the work that again, the guys on the outside, on the perimeter, the wide receiver group, the blocking in this game, I thought it was good against the Colts. I thought they took it up to another level as far as the stuff where they set up things on the perimeter, and there were alleys, like Lombardi-esque alleys for these backs and receivers to run through on the screen to the touchdown to Wilson. What? Like, the way they get out in space, the work they do down the field. But there were a couple of plays, whether it was Jacobs, whether it was Wilson, just where they get them on the perimeter, and there's like, it looked like a legit hallway for them to run through. It was so impressive all throughout this game.
It's so fun when you can get a team to buy in what you're really trying to do on offense. And you can tell these wide receivers, they are young, they're competitive. They have 6 guys who can play. And it is very clear that the message is, you want to be out on the field, you want to get your 20, 30, 40 snaps, whatever it is, you better as heck be blocking, or we have the 5 other guys will be out there doing that. And I thought Ben Fennell did a great job of highlighting the one with Jaden Reed in the end zone where he's blocking. I think it was Snead on the play that he's blocking, and Malik is able to get in on that one. Like you said, the screen to Emmanuel Wilson. Bo Melton had a really good block on one play. It just doesn't matter. They cycle through them, and you're talking, again, all different shapes and sizes and of just types of wide receivers, and Dobbs and Watson and Wicks and Melton and Heath and all those guys. And it just does not matter. They're all going out and doing their job.
I think Heath is the perfect example because he's a guy who's not getting production, right? He's not getting even targets in the passing game, but he's out there, and you kind of forget that he's out there sometimes until you go back and watch the tape. There's like a play in particular, I think it's early in the game, where he cracks down and just springs open a wide open lane. That's the work, right? And again, that guy's not seeing the ball. but man, they just seem to relish that job. And you can see the product. The production is undeniable as far as what they're able to do on the ground. You love to see it.
I saw you tweet at the end. I think it was at the NFL about some of the penalties.
Oh,
So I want to like, because I think there is clearly a little bit of nitpicking here and whatever. But also it's been, I think, what, 10 penalties, 6 penalties, 10 penalties, something like that.
The Packers are not blameless here.
No, in
not
3
get
games.
It twisted.
So where do you come down on, where Green Bay's at from a penalty standpoint right now?
It's a problem. It's a big problem. Not only because, look, yes, the NFL is over officiated. Yes, these guys look at ticky-tack stuff and call nonsense flags all the time. But you start getting a rep for that kind of stuff, they start looking harder for that kind of stuff. And then you've got a target on your back. And then those flags, which were already terrible and way too many, like killing drives, what have you, well, now suddenly that compounds on itself. So, yeah, I would never sit here and say like, oh, the Packers have done nothing wrong, because they clearly do. They are way, way too undisciplined in some areas when it comes to the pre-snap stuff, the holding from Walker. Like, if I see one more drive just blown up because he just won't let go for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And now, again, even some of that is a bit gray area for me. Like, I thought the first hold on Walker, man, we've seen that go uncalled a million times in the league. But this is my point, right? Like, once you get a rep and once you start looking for it, guys will start throwing those flags, and you have got to clean that up so you don't give them excuses to throw more laundry.
Somebody asked me this today. I don't think there's a correlation, but maybe there's a little bit with Josh Jacobs being a little bit of a new runner, and he has some unique ways of cutting back and going across the grain and cutting outside. It's almost like when you go from a pocket passer to somebody who's going to buy time a little bit more, and your receivers have to sort of adjust to always staying open and that the ball can come to you at any time. It's almost like with these offensive linemen of like, you don't know where Josh is going to cut. It might be a run right. He might run left. Like he is a unique runner in that regard. And I do wonder if there's a little bit of just, learning his sort of style and being like, okay, I have to be ready at any time because he's going to cut in a million different directions and it could be anywhere at any time. I got to make sure I am staying there instead of being like not prepared for it. And then all of a sudden you're reaching and grabbing a little bit. I don't think it's a perfect apples to apples thing, but I do wonder if there's maybe a little bit of that where they're still gaining the,
the feel for the back kind of thing.
Thank
you.
Mean,
maybe, but I mean, it's not like Aaron Jones didn't do that.
No, I know.
A bit.
That's what I mean.
Like, all I can think of when you say that too is like there was a very specific play last year where Jones starts to the right, it's not there. He cuts it all the way back to the left, way up the left sideline. Like, I think there's something to the idea that it's early in the season, and the back may be shifting, right, and you're just holding on a little too long. That's the stuff they got to clean up. But yeah, I do think early season problems probably lean into this or underlie this more than say getting used to the running back. Just because, again, they've blocked for really good running backs who do a lot of that kind of thing before. It's just they've just got to be a little bit more disciplined, especially seemingly early in these games. It's weird. Like, it's just been a problem right out of the gate almost all 3 weeks. But maybe that gets cleaned up, hopefully, for Sunday's matchup, which Andy and I will be previewing later this week for the Cheesehead TV Nation newsletter and for Pack-A-Day members. Andy, thank you so much for the time, man. And I'll talk to you later.
Can't wait. Thanks so much, man.